Good morning. This is Jay. I am new to this format, so this is a new experience for me. I'm getting used to seeing all the attendees in the side box, and we'll get started here in a couple of minutes. I just thought while we're waiting for the last people to arrive that, I'd play with this a little bit. It looks like there's a way over in the side box if you push on raise your hand that I can see it, and then I'll know that you can actually raise your hand. I promise I'm not going to take tons of surveys throughout the conversation here because, well, I'm new to this, but I can't not play with new toys. So I don't see any hands going up, so I want to make sure you're hearing me. There you go. Okay, that's what I wanted to see. Got enough hands. I know that my audio is working, and it looks like the video is working. Let's show my screen. And I'm trying to see where my face shows up so I know what I look like. Well, saw this last night. Okay. Now I know what I look like. Oh my, sorry about that. You'll have to look at me as well. Okay, so figuring out this technology, it's exciting. It is like talking into a very quiet room. So there's the potential for you to ask questions, and those will show up in a box over here on my right, and I'll keep that open. Feel free, if something comes up while I'm talking, to throw a question up in the chat there. If I can work it into the conversation I'm having with you, then I'll certainly do that, but if not, we'll make sure we hit it when I get to the end for Q&A. So feel free to put questions in there as you think of them. I suppose if you want to just say leave to the end, you can give me that cue as well. But otherwise, I'll try and work them in. My normal MO is actually to work more as a fireside chat and do a dialogue than it is to do a presentation. So I will apologize in advance. I am not the guru of all things PowerPoint, but I do my best to not embarrass myself, as it were. You know, marketing guys. So your success and failure will be measured by the strength of your brand. That sounds like a fairly audacious statement. Obviously, at your memorial service, probably that's not going to be the first thing they say is, gee, he certainly didn't live up to his brand promise. But in the marketplace and amongst your peers, this is certainly a conversation that will be happening, and at some level will be how your company is valued and how your success, at least in the eyes of others, is measured. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my brand. I actually try to keep a forward face to the planet. I consider myself a massively parallel entrepreneur because I think serial entrepreneurs are just a little bit too, well, conservative. There's not enough time in our lives to do them sequentially, especially if there's golden handcuffs in between. So I end up getting myself involved in a number of new ventures and have done a lot to work as an advisor to companies in order to stay part of the startup scene. I've been in the game industry as either an evangelist or a brand manager or business development since 93, 94. The first game I actually had the opportunity to work on was The Incredible Machine. I'm still very proud of that today and excited to be working with Jeff Donnell again on Contraption Maker, which is going to go live on Steam, come out of early access tomorrow or the next day. So I'm excited about seeing that old classic come back in new form. I was a partner with Jeff and the team at Garage Games, and it was the creator of Indie GamesCon, so I got to put on a kegger with a lot of sessions from 2002 to 2005. We had a lot of fun. That was kind of before indie was cool, and we were trying to get tools out there that would enable people to make AAA quality games without having to pay $1 million in licensing fees. You can imagine I was very excited to see Epic come out with a source available $10 a month plan. So right now I'm a startup advisor to game entrepreneurs. I'm also an entrepreneur myself and have a company that I'm leading on, focused on building strong businesses, advising on brands. I do a lot of business development. In other words, I'm involved with the deal flow from a number of different aspects. So I've had 11 startups, not all of them what you would consider fiscally successful. The first one was when I was 9 years old. My dad put me in business at our campground in Florence, Oregon, and that was an experience of doing a lot of face-to-face work. I sold everything from firewood to night crawlers, and I had to collect the rent from people who didn't put it into the box, and that was, at 9 years old, I think the thing that kind of set my entrepreneurial spirit. In 1984, the same day that Michael Dell started Dell Computing, I started a company called the System Works. We can all tell which one was more successful. This was called a System House back then, and we sold CompuPro. We're a CompuPro Gold dealer, so if you know what an S100 system is, then you're almost as old as I am, I guess. Then with my wife, we had a design firm for over a decade and got to do what this discipline I'm going to talk about today in terms of branding for other companies, and this is where I got my 10,000 hours of expertise in identity development and branding. At that time, we were working with an ISP and actually took on a role with them, and they had a nice exit during the DSL days. A cookie company that we worked with, and then there was many different clients, but these are the ones I had equity interest in. And then there was Andrew Smash, which I bled on, and it was a franchise company, was reinventing burgers, fries, and shakes, happened to be meatless, smoothies and healthy fries. Probably got where the Achilles heel to that idea was. But, Baja Fresh meets Jamba Juice 10 years, or let's see, 20 years ago. No, 17 years ago. So then in my game experience, I've been at Garage Games as a partner, as I said, was the founder of Indie GamesCon. Then after I exited Garage Games and started my own consultancy, I've been doing work with companies since 2006 underneath the Strategy Group. And then where I met my current business partner in the new venture that I'm leading on, BitRaider, which is the historical first successful streaming engine that can stream any game, and the technology is used on Star Wars: The Old Republic. And we've got a lot of exciting announcements coming up. This is one of those overnight successes that we've been working on since 2006. So it's a hard problem to solve, but we've actually done it. We've got the patents issued, and we have the proof in the marketplace. So that's exciting. And then this is my big ta-da for today. This is the team that I'm working with now. We're doing pre-publishing, a lot of deal flow assistance, and working with companies to help with that part that doesn't necessarily scale across small portfolios in terms of product management, branding, and deal and distribution work. And that is through the Alacrity Group. We came to this name because we realized we really could differentiate ourselves in the market if we were prompt, cheerful, and eager. And we would build your business with alacrity. It's an old word I've always liked, and one that I hope to embody in our brand promise. So today, branding is a huge topic, and people take courses on it that last semesters. So we're not going to be able to deal with the breadth of branding. There's a lot that I won't be addressing, but I wanted to give you basically a trying to figure out a good place for this. But anyway, an overview, or at least the definition that resonates with how I view branding. And Seth is one of the guys that I like to read just to keep my brain intact. And he talks about branding as a set of expectations, memories, stories, relationships that taken together, they account for the ability to choose one product or service over another. And I think that's an important distinction, that set of expectations, that the encounters that people have, the memories, the engagements that they have with a product or company that really differentiates you in the marketplace. And this is, big speak, and we're going to drill down on that. And there's one component of the branding discipline that I want to focus on today, and it's just one part of the brand conversation, but that's brand engagement. And brand engagement really is about the emotional attachment between a person and a brand. That's an important component of understanding, especially as game developers, what we're trying to accomplish in building brands that have meaning and have impact in the marketplace. And getting that emotional attachment, getting that engagement, which we talk about a lot in games. We want to have our games be engaging, is about understanding, what those touch points with players are going to be. And at a very high level, it's about perceptions, it's about the experiences, the interactions, and obviously then even some of the overt media, advertising, press, word of mouth, social media that people are going to have as touch points. And the thing I've left off this list, because we're going to deal with it as an entire conversation, is it's the games. But you can expect that your experiences and your interactions, that's all about the games, and your perceptions, again, all about how people actually engage with you and understand. The three different parts that I end up having conversations about with the teams that I work with are that there's really three different brand domains that you deal with as a game developer. You've got your personal brands, which we'll deal with. That's your personalities and your people, and that's becoming more and more important. You've got your studio brand, which is who you are and what your mission and vision and how you're trying to establish. Usually, and it's inexorably connected with your game brands. So they're a virtuous circle. They are codependent. Your studio brand is built on what have you done for me lately? What is your last game? What are the games that I've had encounters with that help me understand who you are? And your game brands actually are influenced by the promises that you make as a studio to say this is the kind of games we want to make. And I think that's a good thing. Sometimes it feels like they're in competition with each other in terms of resources. Do we go out and promote, our studio identity and what we're doing as a studio, or do we just focus and put all of our resources and energy on our games? And is that, it used to be that before Kickstarter and especially early access, there wasn't always the chance to talk about. You could announce you had a title, but you really couldn't engage with the consumer very effectively in terms of having your game understood. So you were basically in a position where during that period of time, especially if you're under NDA or you were trying to align with a partner who might have the different roadmap to promotion, and you weren't announcing yet. I still see a lot of stuff under stealth just because they're either concerned about competitive issues, or they don't, in some cases, have the time to manage the community, and that's not part of their focus if they're otherwise funded. So even independent studios I see keeping their games under wrap. But that's kind of an old retail model. It's not as I wouldn't say it's not as savvy, social media savvy, or as digital distribution savvy as being able to get your game brand exposed early and get consumers interacting with it as quickly as possible. It's a personal belief of mine. It doesn't fit everybody, but game brands, I believe. So we're going to jump into the personal brand piece here, and we'll spend the majority of our time on game brands, but I wanted to cover these two because I think it's important when you're understanding how you're building your brand and creating success. As I said before, it's about personalities and people. You know, there's a role, obviously, the voice frequently of any kind of studio comes from the founders, but people want to engage as closely as they can to the developers. So they want to get to know the people behind the studios and the games. And so they want, especially from founders, they want authenticity and they want responsiveness. Responsiveness is a very broad word in terms of, you know, are you responding to market conditions? Also, are you paying attention to your community? Is there a sense that you're listening and that you're actually doing a good job? A group that I find doing a really good job of at least being present, and they have their designers out there. They've got basically all their people at some level communicating with their community, and that's the group over with Star Citizen, the Cloud Imperium guys. You know, they're doing new video blogs every week. They've got you know, a tremendous amount of transparency they're trying to have with the development process. You know, obviously they've raised over $46 million at this point, so they've got some resources to play with. They now have studios in 3 different cities: LA, Austin, and over in the UK. And I think that they're doing a good job of trying to stay authentic and yet at the same time, you know, with the designers, you know, they're talking about the play and the play experience. Community managers, I think, are going to continue to elevate in importance in an organization or a new venture, especially in the gaming. I see community management as a part of the founder's domain in many cases, because it has to be part of the inherent culture of a studio in order to be effective. The idea that they're, quote, transparent, I don't really align with that. I think you could want to be translucent in the sense that you let people see as far in as is appropriate, but people don't necessarily want full transparency. That's just too much of how the sausage is made. And I think that that's, you know, one of the things that is a balancing act for understanding how to be truthful with your community, but then also, you know, how to make sure that they feel listened to, but not like out of control. And you see trolls and other parts of this internet as we experience it as part of that management that has to happen as far as communication. And then the artists and the engineers, again, it's about style and look and feel. Engineers, I've had, you know, different levels of support over the years in terms of the how good they are at keeping on message, and sometimes that's been, especially if there's something that we've agreed that we're going to wait to tell people about, where my leaks come from. But in this age of the internet, you kind of expect some things just not to stay secret. So, and then kind of as an underlying component to this, everyone is a brand ambassador. Everybody is a voice, a face, or a spokesperson for the organization, especially with independents. I just don't see any way that the personal brands don't add up to the studio brand. So we've got the personal brand. And I think, you know, there's a lot more we could say about this, but this gives you a sense of, you know, how these voices need to kind of play to communicate with your players. The studio brand, you know, that's much more the traditional corporate, or at least business image that you try and portray, and a lot of this goes back to, you know, who is, you know, IBM or Apple or Coca-Cola, or any of the major corporations that kind of are umbrellas for all the product that they have. And that's all about vision and promise. I think the brand promise that you make as a studio is how people will measure how successful your games are, and it'll be that touch point in terms of the overall approach to your organization that makes or breaks whether people feel emotionally connected to you. And I think that's when you look at Double Fine or some other companies that I'll talk about in a minute here, you'll get where some of those studios have actually created expectations. I mean, I know a Blizzard title has to hit a certain bar. It's easy for them to even with a phenomenal game, disappoint me because I expect such a high level of polish. And you can see that with franchises as well as studios, but frequently it's the studio that kind of sets the value bar. And again, that's about your mission. Where are the places you can communicate that? You've got it on your website presence with your mission and values, who you are and what you're about. You've got social presence, and I think this is becoming probably the most important driver as I see Reddit and Facebook and forums and even Google Hangouts and recordings becoming more and more important. I think that's one of those places where it's just a matter of how much are you able to keep present in the marketplace, talk as candidly and with as much authenticity as you can without potentially getting into deal with it type issues. And I think those are challenges that we have in terms of the studio and how it relates. And it goes back to that community manager. Again, how much presence you have in your forums, how you're communicating. Your media presence, it's all about your interviews. I still think there's a lot to be done there in preparation for independents as well as other developers to know how to be, quote, mediagenic, or at least able to get into interviews where you're interesting, where they're going to call you back because you say stuff that actually wasn't necessarily completely on script, but at the same time you come away with it knowing that you've met the communication objectives that you've had in going out. So Josh has a question, an interesting blog about interaction and community from a developer standpoint, and talks about a Gamma Sutra piece. Not sure if everybody can see that in the channel. That's a good question. But if you can, there's another negotiating the control and version production. So it's more data, I think, around this conversation. So industry presence, that's speaking, advising, obviously IGDA, volunteering, being involved, being in the market is important in building your studio brand. So now we get to the good stuff, right? We get to the game brands. And these, in games, it's everything about fun and engagement. It's kind of like a duh, right? We talk about how addicting are our games, and that's all about engagement or brand connection or emotional touch points, right? So, we have personal brands. I'm sure you guys recognize these two guys. Everybody knows who they are because at least everybody in the industry knows who Ravio is, and pretty much everybody who's got a tablet or machine that can run a casual game knows who they are from their merchandise in the gas station. I thought that was a point where I wasn't sure if they jumped the shark or they truly exploited all opportunities in the marketplace. Gummy Angry Birds. These guys are masters at licensing, and now they've got, in addition to Angry Birds Star Wars, they're doing Angry Birds Transformers, and I'm pretty sure every brand on the planet wants to align themselves with the affinity that they've got, and it's a matter of they get to choose now. Now there's a little bit lesser known group that I quite like and was quite excited about when I saw them at E3. I don't know who would recognize those in the audience. I won't do a show of hands, but the Spry Fox guys, David Ederle and Daniel Cook. They just got featured yesterday on GamesBeat, and I was quite excited to see them in the PlayStation booth with the road not taken character in full costume and getting showcased. I felt like indies have arrived when you have costumes on the floor for independent titles and the kind of marketing muscle that Sony brings to its brand portfolio being exhausted and targeted on the brands of independence. That to me is a new bellwether in terms of high water mark for independence in this market today. Again, having founded Indie Gamescom, my heart and soul is with them. I really want to see independent studios succeed. So that's just some examples of some, obviously really well-known game brands from a personal, studio, and then game level. And I think it's important to look at the quality of the identities, all that sort of thing. But I didn't really want to drill down on trademarks today as much as stay in with the brand engagement piece. So what we have here is probably the meat of what I want to talk about today, and that's the game brands. Again, fun and engaging. There's a lot of components to successfully having a brand in the marketplace. I've highlighted a few of the ones that are top of mind for me that I see help differentiate companies and really allow games to find their own voice and market. And a lot of these are going to be does, but the challenge is when I go to the App Store or I go to, in many cases, Steam or wherever I'm finding distribution of these titles, I'm seeing a big caveat, big difference between the haves and the have-nots. The guys that really understand getting tightly crafted store copy that is clear and on message, and maybe even quotes some of the reviews that they've had. And I see a lot of them lose it, maybe not on the initial launch, but when they put up the copy that then becomes what I see first in their updates, and all of I see is a poorly listed change log that doesn't really sell the game anymore. And I don't know exactly what the why should I care and the so what is some of the questions I always ask when I'm either crafting a news release or putting copy together. It's the what's in it for me from the consumer side. It's easy to talk about benefits. It's very hard to make them resonate with the voice that you want to have for your company and your game, and make sure that it doesn't sound like marketing speak. And that's of anything that's happened in the last decade that consumers have become allergic to is too much spin, which isn't good for my business, but certainly good for those who want to be authentic in the marketplace and not sound like it's all basically marketing copy that doesn't have a sense of authenticity. So now you have to make it tight and effective communication without sounding too slick, which is I think a big challenge for people who are looking at creating that brand image that they want to have in the marketplace. Amazing screenshots. Little known fact, I know some of the people that would work on Grand Theft Auto, and they would tell me that they would take as many as 600 screenshots for any one that would get published. And that was to get the story told, get the drama that's happening on the screen, in many cases photoshopped in, but to communicate to the consumer who's got a static image of what this is. And there's even a whole design document that had to do with how screenshots are taken and what the angle of the camera is, without using the language that was used, but the crotch shot was what they would call the up from the ground towards the protagonist, and that was part of the drama that they would always have, and that was where they got a consistent look and feel. You intuitively somehow knew that it was going to be a Grand Theft Auto shot because of the way the shots were composed, and that's a difficult thing to do. I'm not saying everything has to be a Grand Theft Auto shot, but I am saying don't be satisfied with static, that when you have somebody else look at it and you ask them what they see and to tell you what the story is, whether or not they get it or not. And the way they emote about, oh my gosh, I want to play this game. Anymore, everybody's saying, screenshots are passé, everybody's going to YouTube, everybody's pushing off to high-quality trailers, which I'll talk about in a second. But guess what? You don't get them there unless your copy and your screenshots hook them and engage them enough to click. I mean, yes, you can have potentially clickbait headlines, but for the most part, that's not going to get the audience that you want to have engaged. So it's important. I mean, it's something that I sound like a broken record, but that's part of the discipline of building your game brand. And as an independent developer, we no longer have a publisher who's in the expertise, in most cases, position to be doing that for you. So it's important to get that skill set. High-quality trailers, I mean, it's easy to say and it's hard to budget for. I mean, even on a Kickstarter, getting a good quality trailer can be a significant chunk of change in terms of resources and just the cost to get the production quality where you want it. Voiceover and camera work and lighting and all the things that it takes, whether you're talking about in-game or showing off the personalities around the game and building your brand that way. It's really important, but the challenge is how do you get the resources to do it? How do you get as good at making trailers as you are at making fun games? And I think one of the advantages now is that now the marketing department is the developer. I mean, there really isn't the differentiation. And I used to have challenges when, we'd go off and make box art for the retail channel, and there would be better art sitting there in the artists that worked on the concept for the game than what we went and commercially engaged to get for tens of thousands of dollars. And that's old news now, but being able to understand how to repurpose your assets and be thinking about how you want to create those assets while you're building your game. So it's not an interruption to production, it's a flow with production, so that you're already expecting that there's certain assets that you're going to be building, and that if you have to go to PAX, it's not going to delay the game shipping by 3 months because you spent all that time on the demo. Sometimes it can do that just because you don't have enough resources to do both, but be aware of that ahead of time so at least it's in the budget and the milestones. So you're making true on the promises, especially if you say when you're going to ship, that you're not disappointing people. That seems to be a big concern, and most safe thing is that it'll ship when it's ready, but you at least want to have some dadas along the way. Trailers, good quality video ads, especially now as we see banners and video ads driving mobile discovery. That's an important piece. Strong media presence. I mean, this is kind of a duh, but it takes a lot of work for the print and the online reviews, which, if you read everything, if you believe what you're reading now, a lot of people are seeing that get enough traction that they get YouTube coverage, which actually drives sales. The session that the guys over at Telltale Games gave about how their episodic content was driven by their YouTube videos and how they focused the majority of their marketing resources on that, and basically backed up with social media and other means their YouTube presence. I think it's at the moment the most effective strategy. Things always change in the marketplace. We'll see that what this looks like in a couple of years. Right now, I think one of the biggest changes and sea changes I see is that you've got Kickstarter and early access. As a brand guy or even a brand manager, trying to get people excited about your game before there was a game to play, that's why E3 was so important to show those trailers and get those demos out, is that was our methodology for distribution. Remember back before the internet was driving everything, was when I was first doing all this. But a lot of that methodology hasn't really changed because there wasn't a way to get people engaged with you and building a community around your title until your title shipped, until you launched. So everything was pushing towards that launch moment. And now I believe that, especially with free-to-play and MMOs and the fact that you're never done and it's software as a service or games as a service, you don't have nearly the pressure on the launch being successful, but it still is going to be that high watermark in most cases that you have to continue to try and eclipse with further content releases and features and so on. And again, there's a whole conversation we could have around, how do you test and launch and all that. But I think the key that I wanted to focus on here for brand development is that there's a way that you can get people engaged, have touch points, and working with your team to build community prior to a game shipping. And this is, in the last couple of years, really having that kind of capacity. There were some exceptions that were able to do it, but for the most part, even if you announced your game early, it was hard to keep people interested in what you were talking about with just the traditional assets that you had. And now people can get directly connected, they can become owners, they can be giving you input and feedback and be part of a community. It's not that you wouldn't have people who were interested in what you're doing, but they weren't anybody you could address or communicate with as stakeholders in your game and its outcome, and being able to build word of mouth and all that. And again, I think social media assists with that, but it doesn't drive it like I think Early Access and Kickstarter can. Facebook, Reddit does to a certain degree. I have to admit that in some of these areas like Twitter, I'm still trying to get it. I'm one of those, non-natives of this, and while I get it intellectually, I certainly behaviorally haven't tipped. The time you get in the forums, that's something that I think is crucial, especially as an independent. And that's like, for example, communicating with people in Greenlight if you're getting onto Steam, and who knows where Greenlight will go in the next number of months. But still, for right now, getting out to events, PAX, regional Comic-Cons, wherever you can get in front of your potential audience, and it isn't always relegated to these because these are pretty specific to certain genres, but it's an example of a place where you can get people playing your game, see the response, and start to build community. So that kind of gives you some of the tools and ways you can get engagement. The probably next piece of it is the hardest part, and this is what everybody says. How do you make a great game brand? Well, you make a great game. Yeah, easy to say. And these are all things that, again, could have complete sessions around them. And there kind of does, but they're all important components of delivering on the promise of having a great brand, building a great emotional or consumer experience. Obviously, innovative and somewhat unique gameplay, something that's not just derivative or a clone. I think we're seeing, even in certain genres, in the mobile space as well as in casual games, etc., that they're just completely atrophied the appetite that people have for certain game experiences. I always talk about a lot of casual titles as snack food games. Matter of fact, I own that URL. Snack food games in the sense that we constantly want to, basically have those bite-sized experiences that we can enjoy on an ongoing basis, but that in many ways we don't atrophy our appetite for candy bars and chips and what takes up 4 aisles in major grocery stores is all the junk food that we shouldn't be eating. And that's, not to say that casual games are junk food. I didn't say that. What I meant was is that they're definitely quick to play. In many cases they're what everybody says, easy to learn and hard to master. But you don't atrophy that appetite. But I'm seeing it happen. I'm seeing it happen because, especially of the type of cloning we've seen, and just the gameplay is not being unique or innovative. It's just derivative. This meets that, or with a slight twizzle, but nothing that gets me excited as a player. That goes along with the new user experience. Actually, probably should put compelling play mechanics right next to innovative gameplay, but play mechanics are obviously those systems that give you the compulsion loops that allow people to get engaged and stay engaged, and at some level those have to be addictive, and that's an important piece. The new player user experience, the onboarding and retention, gosh, especially in the free-to-play space, this is filling up books and conferences, and certainly not anything I'm going to be able to exhaust in a brief conversation here. But it does align with your brand, what that first impression is, whether, no matter where they get it, but especially of your game. Hard to remake a first impression, as everybody knows, and that's where you can convert or lose somebody from being interested to being a non-player, and it's very, very difficult to get them back. And so that new user experience, the onboarding, relates to a point down later on fun testing, but intuitive UI, gosh, the number of teams that I see do really good play mechanics, have something that's truly different, and then it's lost to, as people say, the UI just kicked my rear in terms of the play experience. And that's part of what we talk about when we talk about polish, but it's an important piece of that user experience again, where it's intuitive and you're able to be able to navigate the game, and it's, again, lots of sessions written on this. I'm not nearly the expert that most people probably are in the room. Great narrative when possible. Obviously, not every game fits that, but I think it's more and more important as you're creating great brands that it's important to have narrative that has a story arc, and have fan fiction is potentially exploitable as a graphic novel or a webisode. Have even narrative that's part of the canon that's built around the universe or world that people are playing in. Obviously, the bigger the game, the more compelling that can become. But even on small games, that's part of it, in building those believable characters and building plot and story arcs. Again, there's whole writing SIGs on that, right? So we've got a lot of, but again, part of the brand piece. Market competitive, product quality, production quality. I think it's difficult sometimes when you start a game. There's a certain bar as far as how good games have to be competitive in the marketplace, and sometimes by the time you get it done, that bar can have moved. When we talk to clients, we talk about the fact that when we were in the casual game space and things were on Facebook and they were moving towards tablet, and we were seeing probably the NES start to move to the SNES in terms of a meme or a metaphor for the quality bar that was moving. Right now, I think we've already hit the SNES on tablets, and what it takes to be good quality production, and be able to be if you're going to start now, you better start working on like N64 type quality in terms of a metaphor of the difference between where we're at now and where we're going to be when your game needs to find its sweet spot. Again, that's being ahead of the market appetite. Hard to predict. My crystal ball isn't always perfect, but the more you pay attention to it and work with people who do, the more you're capable of at least not being eclipsed completely. Market opportunity is one of the three stools, three legs of the stool that I talk about when I talk about the alchemy of fun. Another session I'll do someday on one of these webisodes, but basically you've got talent, technology, and market opportunity that make up the three legs, and I think that getting all three at the right place at the right time is when lightning strikes. So it's a matter of you make your own opportunity, but at the same time there are games that were great games that hit either in somebody else's impact crater or just when people weren't paying attention to that particular genre or many other market conditions. And great games didn't succeed even though they were great games, and maybe even had the marketing support they needed to get discovered. And now we're seeing it even more. You can't just build it and they will come. You actually have to be able to afford the promotional budgets that it takes to acquire customers to build communities as well. So fun tested with players. This is something that if you don't know who Nicole Lazaro is and haven't read her papers, please familiarize yourself. She's at part of the bloody edge of that conversation. I think it's important. Zeo Designs, you'll find that she's done a lot of good work in that area. Brand extendable or transmedia IP, that kind of goes back to the brand extension I was talking about with great narratives. If you've got, potentially merchandise that can be created. Something I talk about is the independent bands today make or break not so much on their music, but on the margin they get off their T-shirt. In the future, I don't know that that's going to be too far from the truth for people who are understanding how to engage their players. That could be the delta between a profitable game and a non-profitable one, is the brand extensions. Again, characters and story and emotional connection. I think that's all about quality branding. And again, there was a session I just saw at Casual Connect last year where it talked about how to build that kind of IP, and comes out of the Hollywood methodology. And so there's a lot in that. It's a whole other session again. So that kind of exhausts how to brand a great game and how to get that duh factor of these are all the things that's easy to say, Jay, but I don't see you coding them or art directing. No, I'm the guy that just puts the deals together and looks for great games that I can get behind and help make successful. So to that degree, I want to shift now into Q&A mode. This slide deck will go up, and I've got the sources of influence that have kind of made up this. Actually, at the bottom here, there's a slide deck that came up when I searched one of my old branding decks, which was kind of embarrassing to say the least, but it's People Don't Care About Your Brand, and that I'd recommend. It's a great read. It's a counterpoint to what I just said. Although I noticed that they use the #1 brand to show that, if you build it, they will buy it. But reality is Apple actually does drive some cues. Anyway, that's a great resource. Then this is something I'd love to do a full session on. This is the way brands are valued, and I think that there's a lot of good information. This is just the last page of like a 70-page report on the most affected brands in the marketplace. And these are the criteria by which they use to value brands. And these are the internal factors and external factors. And again, this is probably its own session, but it helps you to understand some of what I was talking about if you get into authenticity and relevance, differentiation, different words, a lot of the same meanings. And then that's me. Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions here, and if you will forgive me, I will put on the ability to see my screen with my contacts in. Yes, I'm old, 30 years married in July of this year. Okay. Can someone who's just starting out in indie development contribute meaningfully to the IGDA? Wow, that's a great question. I can give you my perspective as somebody who's done a bit of volunteer work. I once ran for the board and lost. And I believe now more than ever, I mean, obviously there's a chapter level contribution, there's the SIG level contribution that happens, and as volunteers, there's more and more opportunities as Kate moves forward with some of the event work that I'm not sure how much is public, but that is coming down the pipe. So yes, I think you can contribute meaningfully. I think, Brian Robbins is the guy I always point to. I wouldn't know him except, we hung out at conferences together a bunch, but as a personality in the industry, except for his original, chapter level contributions that he did, he got recognized as an MVP in the IGDA at a time in the IGDA when it was much less capable of making an impression. And I think this is something that would be good for somebody probably on the board or Kate to address, but that's a great question. You got what I have to say, but I think absolutely. And I know I'm missing a bunch, so.
Hey Jay, do you want me to I could try to answer that a little
so
bit.
Josh, yeah.
Hi, it's
there you go. I was just thinking I should ask.
I could answer that a little bit.
Thank you, Tricia.
You're welcome. So I'm Tristan, Operations Manager for the IGDA. I may have met some of you, or you may know who I am. Yes, you can contribute meaningfully to the IGDA, and by contributing, participation really is the best way. I mean, anything that you do, getting involved in your local chapter, helping lead your local chapter, helping develop your local community is a great way. Ed just did his board talk was about the importance of community and how the IGDA can fulfill that role in a local chapter. As an indie developer, sharing your lessons learned, things that you've found that have helped succeed, or things that you're like, no, this did not work for us. Lessons and tips and tricks. And then even if you are interested in the IGDA, you can go up to the R level and say, how can I get involved? Kate and I are the staff, and then everybody else that's helping us as a volunteer, our web stuff, our development, you could write white papers or articles or stories. There's just so much that you can get involved in, and it, really is what are you passionate about, and we can probably help you use that. That's my long spiel.
Absolutely, and then I'm realizing if I don't say something about the foundation, Tom, who recently stepped down from chair and is a good friend of mine. The reason that you're listening to me today is he's got a way of persuading me that I need to present. Tom's recent contributions to the IGDA Foundation. It's an important place that you can give back, and off the top of my head I can't give you all the things the foundation does, but that's another place to look at, because I think that embodies a lot of the, beyond just the political advocation and position statements and all the things that the IGA does. It's a place where there's a huge opportunity for people to give back and to build their brand in terms of getting visibility. I think what's going on right now, what I see at the chapter level and the SIG level and in the forums, more than ever before, the website and everything that the IGA is doing is coming alongside and aligning with that value of giving people visibility and recognition for their contributions. So, thanks, Josh. You saved me from having no questions. I really appreciate it. And any other questions while we're at it that people want to type in? I can unmute the whole thing if we want to do it where people would have the chance to talk.
Jay, there are a couple of other questions in here. I'm not sure.
Are there? Okay, I must have been missing them.
Yeah, depending on how it gets sorted, if you hit received, it might. So there's another one from Josh.
Okay. I saw the ones about Gama Sutra.
I can read them if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Josh asks, are there third-party companies that help indies with promotional assets, hitting up websites, journalists, etc.?
There are, and when I was doing garage games, I did a lot to curate what resources there were in the marketplace. Now I'm aware of them, but I don't have, to my chagrin, a quick list that I can refer to. There's definitely guys focused on each of the individual aspects, whether it's PR or marketing, and there are some other people like ourselves that are assisting with, kind of the pre-publishing piece, or even trying to be non-evil publishers for independents. Because a lot of those things that you're looking at are the types of things that publishers would have provided in the past. So the challenges for service providers in that area is that, they're used to being able to charge, 10x what an independent can usually even afford. So there's a transition happening in the marketplace as far as service providers go to try and figure out how to address a much larger audience with a lower fee structure and still be able to be profitable at what they do. And I'm seeing that's a crunch I see, and we've taken kind of an innovative approach from, we'll work with companies on a success fee basis where we'll get a part of their upside if we can help them become successful, and that's how we can participate. But it's a challenge. It's a difficult piece to bridge right now, and there may be some more that turn that around. There's an opportunity for getting some of that updated and clarified in the directories that are available on the IGDA. I know that Gama Sutra is kind of atrophied on that as well. As far as when I search for, let's just say art houses, I can find all the guys that are doing AAA stuff for the big guys, but you don't get the less found art guys. They're out there, but they're less showcased. And I think that's something where art, audio, all the things that are easily outsourced in the development cycle, there's some opportunity for, but those same types of services in the marketing sphere usually are more expensive than what most indies can afford. Don't know any better way to answer it because I don't have. So apply that same question to game dev students as well as indie developers. And I believe the same question is, are there third party? I think, for game dev students, I think the challenge is, at least from my perspective, is to really get market savvy and to build a network. Because in some ways, as a student, you might have the opportunity to intern or participate on a game, especially if you got marketing chops, and be able to help those games get better discovery, get better traction with their community, and build your resume that way, whether you want to go to work for an independent or for a traditional studio. And I think that's one of those places where it's not, quote, cheap labor, but it's at least learning labor where there's, on the intern side, a virtuous circle of both the developer getting high benefit. And so then it's a matter of proximity, what studios are looking for that in the area. I'm more familiar with Seattle, San Francisco, Austin, and LA than I am, like Chicago or Philadelphia or New York. But each of the places, and some of those schools that are churning out what I call diploma mills are less aligned with industry people. But if you're in a game dev program, I say that you should go and have a mentor relationship with anybody who's in their advisory board. They may not be available to it, but at least give it a shot. Those people are committed to trying to see those programs succeed, and part of that is seeing success come out of their students. And I would not be bashful at all to build your network, because it's one of the things you have in terms of building your personal brand that you can do while you're in school and put more energy into than most people do. They put a lot of energy into their education checkbox, but that's only a very small part of your brand value as a person when you get into the industry. So who you know, knowing who you want to work for, all that. I didn't really answer the question, but I did a good job talking, I guess. Do you have an opinion on the initiatives like the Square Enix Collective? It seems like a good idea that they will help you get your brand out there, but their first supported project to go to Indiegogo only reached 25% of their total. Yeah, actually I was watching that pretty carefully because I thought one of the things that's going to be the biggest challenge in Kickstarter and Indiegogo going forward is the indictment of projects failing. And so having a publisher like Square Enix come alongside and basically do the due diligence. They sent their tech team in. They said, yes, we believe these guys can make it. It's an ambitious project, but they're asking for the right amount of money so that you can have confidence that they're going to be able to hit the goal. All those things lined up for me, and having a platform that can do that. I wouldn't write them off based on the first experience. They're still building their visibility and the challenge of you know, I looked at that game. It was a good game. It was a little nichey in the sense of having a broad market-based interest in it. It obviously was also in the same space. We've seen a few other titles come out in it. Not exactly. It was innovative. I'm blanking on the title name and so on, but it's a difficult thing to do a good Kickstarter at the type of funding levels that we're hitting now, and so it's going to take some big muscle market support to get the exposure that you need to make those initiatives successful. But I wouldn't count, you know, just because they had their first experiment not fully fund. I think that's an indicator of the future. I mean, obviously Steam with Valve has already started to break open with early access a lot of revenue for people who don't really have much more than a prototype. And Kickstarter is a virtuous circle with Greenlight and early access work to help build that community thing, and it all is part of that thing I was talking about earlier in terms of creating community before you actually have a game. There are some other initiatives like Square that I'm seeing percolate out there. Nothing that I'm getting super excited about. In some ways, you could say that game accelerators are trying to address some of the same issues directly around funding and getting capital in that is needed to build the IP so that we can have a brand and create community. That's probably a different twist to the Square Enix collective, but I see it as an emerging part of our market architecture and something I want to see, or I want to be part of that next wave of how we attract capital to the right IPs, and more to come about that in the future. That's part of my passion, and I think anything you can do to have better go-to-market, whether it's aligning with a publisher like Square Enix or Steam. You know, I think we've maybe hit the high point with Steam in terms of if you get listed, you're rich kind of thing, which didn't actually happen, but was closer to the case than it is today. But all this is out there in the media. I'm just parroting what everybody else knows.
Jay, I think we'll do this last question from Chris,
okay.
if you want to do that,
and
then
hold on. Sure.
Yeah, and then we'll be done.
Okay. Super. And I again will read the question. So it seems that branding core concepts must be figured out as part of the game concept phase so that it can be a pillar of the game design. There's a lot of problems that coming in when the marketing branding forces change on a game after it has been developed past the concept prototype phase. Absolutely. Matter of fact, I think part of the secret sauce of independent development is that you have to think about your community and your audience and your brand. Even if you don't use the vocabulary I just did, it's still the same when you're thinking about how are we going to get this to succeed in the marketplace. What are we going to do different? All the stuff I talked about. But that brand strategy as part of your game design, I honestly think that makes us stronger new ventures. It makes us something that's a better bet, because rather than taking, you know, the game that I really want to play and having a bunch of we used to call them grognards when I was at Dynamics, but really hardcore players build a game for a niche. You're having people look at the consumer, and maybe it's the girlfriend games Myers likes to talk about, or it's and I don't want to be diminutive with that. That's meaning that guys are going to go wherever the girls are, and if we could make better games that girls found appealing, oh my gosh, you know, maybe they don't have to all be driven by blood and guts, and there can be more collaboration and blah blah. I mean, I'm parroting a lot of common thought out there, but the challenge is for independent developers to understand their market and their audience so that they can build their brand with their community in alignment, rather than trying to come out with market speak after you've got a product that's already done and see if anybody likes it. You know, see if after it's all finished, if you can get anybody excited about it. And I think that's, to be honest, where the real difference is today than the market conditions in the past. Well, thanks everyone for the questions, and hopefully this was useful and could maybe give you a little bit more in terms of tool set in understanding branding. Use the references that I put on the slides, because I think anytime you want to learn about a discipline, you want to learn proactively, and I was trying to give you kind of a high level. So again, thanks, and we'll see you down the road. Anybody who's going to be at Casual Connect, I'll be there for at least a few of the days. Look me up.